All right, Exodus 1, let's call this one, he gave them families, which is exactly what God did for the Hebrew midwives who resisted Pharaoh's order to kill the male Hebrew babies born in Egypt, understanding it was just the wrong thing to do. And so even though they weren't sure what the consequences would be for themselves, they chose to do the right thing, even if it cost them greatly. But it turned out to be a blessing because they saved the lives of the children who deserved protection. And they also got the blessing of families they might not otherwise have had. But this was a very difficult time in Egypt for Israel, as we see backing up to the beginning of the chapter, beginning around verse 6, where it says, "Then Joseph died, and all his brothers and all that generation. But the people of Israel were fruitful and increased greatly. They multiplied and grew exceedingly strong, so that the land was filled with them." And as we've noticed, going back at least as far as Isaac and really going back to Cain and Abel, a biblical theme that recurs throughout the early pages all the way on through the end is the ways in which success breeds backlash. And that's what they're seeing here as we continue on to verse 11. "Therefore they, the Egyptians, set taskmasters over them to afflict them with heavy burdens. They built for Pharaoh store cities, Pithom and Ramses. But the more they were oppressed, the more they multiplied, and the more they spread abroad. And the Egyptians were in dread of the people of Israel. So they ruthlessly made the people of Israel work as slaves." And so it's so important, as we've studied in previous chapters, to understand with sober judgment the response to your success. There are responses to your success that are outwardly going to suggest that you are incapable or that your success is actually failure, when that's just spin. And what's really going on is, as we're seeing with Egypt, even though they are the host nation, they are intimidated by the success Israel is seeing. And now that they are no longer in need of Joseph, they have first world problems, as we've heard it described before. They got problems of privilege. Now that they're no longer hungry and need the Israelites to help guide them out of the famine, now they have the luxury to hate them for their success, and that's exactly what they're doing. But understand this, much like you might have heard old school preachers preach the slingshot principle, and that is, the more your enemies try to pull you back, the more they fail to realize the ways in which God is using them to propel you forward. But the dilemma here for the midwives is that you can only choose to be in one spot, rock or hand, oppression or comfort. You can't have both. And so often when it seems that you can, you find out the hard way that once the hands are done with us, they simply throw us back in with the rocks anyway. So my prayer for you is my prayer for me, that we ask God for both the courage and the endurance to partner with the true rock, who is Christ, understanding that he knows what it's like to be in the pocket of that sling, being squeezed and pulled back in times when you could be easily moving forward. But understand this, the alternative in partnering with the hand isn't as glamorous as it looks, because it leaves you short of fulfilling your potential. And more importantly, partnering with the hand is partnering with the very works that God is coming back to judge. And for that reason, we often say, God's best to you as you go forward in him.